Did you know that the Civil War almost didn't happen? Or that hundreds of women secretly fought in the battles, disguised as men? The Civil War isn't just about famous battles and iconic figures. It's filled with shocking stories, hidden truths, and unexpected twists that you won't find in most history books. In today's video, we're diving into 10 mind-blowing Civil War facts that will completely change the way you think about this pivotal moment in American history. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Let's get started. 1. The Civil War almost didn't happen. It's hard to imagine, but there were moments when the Civil War almost didn't occur. Before the war, there were numerous attempts at compromise. In fact, in the months leading up to the war, both the Union and Confederate states were looking for ways to avoid full-scale conflict. The South wanted to preserve slavery, while the North was determined to keep the Union intact. In 1860, before Lincoln even took office, the Crittenden Compromise was proposed, an attempt to protect slavery where it already existed and extend the Missouri Compromise line, but it was ultimately rejected by Congress. When Lincoln was elected, Southern states felt their way of life was under threat, and they began to secede from the Union, starting with South Carolina. Despite many efforts to negotiate peace, the attack on Fort Sumter in April 1861 marked the beginning of the Civil War. 2. Women fought in the Civil War, disguised as men. Here's one that will truly shock you. Hundreds of women disguised themselves as men and fought in the Civil War. These women didn't just nurse soldiers or work in the background. They took up arms and risked everything. Some of the most notable cases include Sarah Edmonds, who served in the Union Army under the alias Frank Thompson, and even fought in major battles like the Battle of Bull Run. They didn't just serve as soldiers. Many were involved in espionage, reconnaissance, and intelligence work. In fact, some of them went so far as to have full military careers before their true identities were discovered. These women proved that courage and patriotism were not bound by gender, though they were often forgotten in mainstream historical accounts. 3. The South had more generals than the North. This fact might surprise many, but it's true. The Confederacy had more generals than the Union. While the Union Army had about 350 generals during the war, the Confederate Army had around 425. This might sound like an advantage, but it came with its own challenges. The Confederacy's military was often disorganized, and many of these generals were appointed based on political connections rather than military skill. Nevertheless, the South boasted several talented military leaders, including Robert E. Lee, who had once served as a Union officer. His leadership played a significant role in keeping the Confederacy competitive, but the abundance of generals in the South also led to confusion and rivalries that hurt their war effort. Ultimately, despite their skilled leadership, the South lacked the resources and manpower to sustain a prolonged conflict. 4. The Emancipation Proclamation was more symbolic than practical at first. You've likely heard about the Emancipation Proclamation, signed by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1, 1863. But did you know that its immediate effect was limited? The proclamation declared all enslaved people in Confederate-held territories to be free, but it didn't apply to the border states that stayed loyal to the Union, nor did it free enslaved people in Union-controlled territories. In fact, the South didn't immediately release any enslaved people. It wasn't until the Union Army advanced into the South that this declaration began to take practical effect. However, the Emancipation Proclamation had an ultimate goal beyond freeing enslaved people. It shifted the war's purpose from merely preserving the Union to abolishing slavery altogether, making it a moral cause for the Union and aligning the North's military goals with the fight for human rights. 5. The Civil War had the first modern war machines. The Civil War wasn't just a battle of men and muskets, it introduced the world to modern warfare technology. One of the most groundbreaking innovations was the ironclad ship. The Union's USS Monitor and the Confederacy's CSS Virginia were the first iron-hulled warships, which rendered wooden ships obsolete in battle. The famous Battle of Hampton Roads in 1862, between these two ironclads, marked the dawn of a new era in naval warfare. The war also saw the use of railroads to move troops and supplies more efficiently, telegraphy to communicate orders in real time, and repeating rifles that allowed soldiers to fire multiple rounds without reloading. These advancements changed the way wars were fought, and were a precursor to the industrial warfare seen in later conflicts like World War I. 6. The war wasn't just fought on land, it was a war of ideas. While battles and strategies are often the focus when discussing the Civil War, this conflict was just as much about ideas. The Union, led by President Lincoln, fought to preserve the United States and end slavery, which was seen as an inhumane institution. On the other hand, the Confederacy fought for the right to self-govern and preserve their agricultural economy, which was dependent on enslaved labor. Both sides believed they were fighting for their ultimate freedom, whether it was freedom from tyranny or freedom to maintain their way of life. The war wasn't just about geography or military superiority. It was about two radically different worldviews and political ideologies clashing violently. 7. Disease killed more soldiers than combat. One of the most tragic aspects of the Civil War was that more soldiers died from disease than from combat itself. Unsanitary conditions, poor nutrition, and inadequate medical care led to outbreaks of diseases like dysentery, typhoid, malaria, and pneumonia. The crowded conditions in army camps, combined with the lack of basic hygiene practices, allowed these diseases to spread rapidly. In fact, of the approximately 620,000 soldiers who died in the Civil War, nearly two-thirds died from disease, not battle wounds. This staggering loss of life highlights how inadequate medical care and basic public health practices were during the war and underscores the human cost of the conflict. 8. The Battle of Gettysburg was a turning point, but not the only one. Gettysburg is often considered the ultimate turning point of the Civil War, and while it was undeniably significant, it wasn't the only decisive moment. The Battle of Vicksburg, fought around the same time, was just as crucial. The Union's victory at Vicksburg gave them control of the Mississippi River, splitting the Confederacy in two and severing vital supply lines. This victory, combined with the win at Gettysburg, marked a major shift in momentum. While Gettysburg halted the Confederate Army's advance into the North, Vicksburg crippled the South's ability to maintain its war effort. Together, these victories were key to the Union's eventual success. 9. Abraham Lincoln wasn't the first president to be assassinated. Many people mistakenly believe that Abraham Lincoln was the first president to be assassinated, but that's not the case. While Lincoln's assassination in 1865 is the most famous, President James Buchanan, who served before Lincoln, was actually the target of an assassination attempt. In 1861, just before leaving office, Buchanan narrowly escaped an attack by a disgruntled Confederate sympathizer. Lincoln's assassination, however, had a much more profound impact on the country, not just because of his leadership during the Civil War but because of how it led to deep political and social divisions during the Reconstruction era. 10. The South's economy was devastated by the war. After the Civil War, the South was left in ruins. Before the war, the Southern economy was heavily reliant on agriculture, specifically cotton, and of course, enslaved labor. But when the war ended, everything changed. The South's agricultural infrastructure was destroyed, and much of its land was left unproductive. The Confederate currency, which had been worthless by the end of the war, also caused economic chaos. Moreover, with the abolition of slavery, the South had to adapt to a new economy, one where sharecropping and tenant farming replaced the labor system that had sustained them for centuries. The economic devastation of the South would be felt for generations and was a key reason why Reconstruction struggled to bring lasting change. The Civil War was a defining chapter in the story of the United States, and these shocking facts give us a deeper look into the complexities of that time. From the women who fought on the front lines to the technological innovations that changed warfare, the Civil War was about much more than what most of us were taught in school. I hope this video gave you a fresh perspective on one of the most significant events in American history. What facts surprised you the most? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more history deep dives. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.